You know how sometimes money and relationships just don't mix, like, at all?
Yeah, like oil and water.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So today we're going to take a deep dive into supporting a partner during, like, financial instability.
Ooh, when for richer or poorer really gets put to the test.
Right. We're talking job losses, unexpected expenses, those curveballs life throws at you.
Yeah, and, money problems are one of the biggest sources of stress in relationships.
Totally. So we're going to try to give you some tools to navigate those choppy waters. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation.
You'll be ready to weather the storm.
Okay, so for this deep dive, we're looking at the Financial Foundations podcast.
Lots of good stuff in there.
Yeah, and one thing they emphasized over and over again was open and honest communication.
Uh-huh.
They told this story about this couple, right? One partner got laid off out of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
Total shock. And the podcast talked about how important it is to not blame each other.
Right, because it's easy to get, resentful.
So true. But the podcast was all about shifting the perspective. It's not your fault, it's our challenge.
Totally. Like, how do we tackle this together?
Exactly. But, okay, how do you actually do that? Like, communication is key, sounds great, but what does it look like when you're staring down a mountain of bills?
Well, the podcast had this financial therapist who talked about creating a safe space for these conversations.
Ooh, I like that. So it's not just about what you say, but how and where you say it.
Yeah, having that space can make it easier to be honest without feeling judged.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm feeling really stressed about this, instead of, you never told me we were in trouble.
Totally.
Oh.
And active listening is huge. Not just waiting for your turn to talk, but really trying to understand where your partner is coming from.
Yeah, that's so key because it's easy to get caught up in your own anxieties and forget to actually hear what your partner's going through.
Absolutely.
But okay, once you've got that communication going, you need a plan, right? The podcast was big on moving from feelings to action.
Totally, yeah. Talking is important, but it's only the first step.
So what kind of concrete actions did they recommend?
Well, the podcast was really into things like creating a budget together, exploring potential new income sources, maybe even considering professional financial advice.
Right, like acknowledging that you don't have to figure it all out on your own.
Exactly. And, the podcast shared this really cool example of a listener who helped their partner with, updating their resume, practicing for job interviews, even reaching out to their network.
That's awesome. It really shows how you can support each other in those practical ways, not just with words.
Totally. And I think that kind of active participation can really make a difference in how connected you feel as a couple, even when things are tough.
Okay, so we got the communication, the plan, but let's face it, financial instability usually means tightening the belt.
Yeah, having to cut back on things.
And that can be a hard adjustment. The podcast actually talked about embracing a sense of shared frugality.
Right, like becoming more intentional with your spending.
Yeah, and they had this example of a couple who decided to, like, cut back on dining out and expensive entertainment, which, at first sounds kind of like a bummer,
Yeah.
but they actually found that it led them to rediscover simpler pleasures.
Like cooking more meals at home.
Exactly. Exploring free activities in their city, just spending more quality time together without having to spend a lot of money.
It's kind of like going back to the basics, right? Like, remember when you first started dating? You didn't need fancy dinners to have fun together.
So true. And it's a good reminder that sometimes limitations can actually lead to creativity.
Yeah, finding those silver linings.
And speaking of perspective shifts, I loved how the podcast emphasized that financial instability doesn't define anyone's worth.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's so easy to fall into that trap of equating your financial status with your value as a person.
Right. Like if I'm struggling financially, I must be failing somehow.
Exactly. But it's just not true. And the podcast did a great job of reminding us that financial setbacks can happen to anyone.
And it's how you handle those setbacks, how you support each other through the tough times, that really matters.
Totally. It's about recognizing that you're on the same team, facing this challenge together, and your love and support for each other is way more valuable than any amount of money.
So true.
So we've talked about communication, making a plan, taking action, and remembering that frugality doesn't have to mean deprivation. But is there anything else from the podcast that we should highlight?
One thing they brought up that really resonated with me was remembering that supporting your partner through financial instability isn't just about the practical, tangible stuff.
Okay, unpack that for me. What else is there?
Well, it's about offering emotional and mental support too. Like really seeing your partner and acknowledging what they're going through.
So it's not just about saying, we'll figure this out, but also I see you, I hear you, and I'm here for you.
Exactly. It's about reminding them of their strengths, celebrating their small victories along the way, just being that source of support and encouragement when they need it most.
Right. Because sometimes just knowing that someone believes in you can make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. And remember, it goes both ways. It's okay for you to feel stressed or uncertain, too.
That's a good point. Like acknowledging that you're both human and you're both in this together.
Right. Sharing your own vulnerabilities can actually bring you closer and create an even deeper understanding between you.
It's about being honest about how you're feeling and leaning on each other for support.
Exactly. And that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, it really is. And it's not even just about surviving financial instability. It's about like thriving in spite of it.
I love that. So it's like, how can we use these challenges as opportunities to grow
Exactly. Both as individuals and as a couple.
so we can come out stronger on the other side?
Totally. And it's a good reminder that like, even when things are tough financially, there's still so much to appreciate, so much to be grateful for.
Right. Like shifting your focus to those simple things.
Yeah, like a home-cooked meal, a walk in the park,
Mm.
or just spending quality time together.
Those little moments of joy that don't cost a thing.
And something the podcast talked about that I thought was really powerful was this idea that going through financial instability together
Mm.
can actually be a testament to the strength of your relationship.
Okay, now that's interesting because our first instinct is to see these kinds of problems as like threats to a relationship. But you're saying it can be the opposite.
Think about it. When you face adversity as a team, you learn to rely on each other in a deeper way.
You have to work together to overcome the obstacle.
Exactly. And you develop this shared resilience, this sense of like, we can handle anything as long as we have each other.
That's powerful stuff. It's like you either go through the fire together and come out stronger.
Or you crumble.
Exactly. But the couples who choose to face those flames together, to support each other through it,
They come out on the other side with a deeper understanding of themselves, of their partner, and of the strength of their relationship.
like they've been tested by fire.
Exactly. They've proven their commitment to each other, not just in words, but in actions.
And I think that's why it's so important to celebrate those little victories along the way, no matter how small they may seem.
Totally. Acknowledging those wins can make a huge difference in keeping your spirits up.
Right, like landing a job interview, successfully negotiating a lower bill, even just sticking to your budget for a week.
All steps in the right direction, worth celebrating.
So we've covered a lot here. Communication, creating a plan, taking action, embracing frugality, supporting each other emotionally, and remembering that going through this together can actually strengthen your bond. But at the end of the day, what's the takeaway for our listener? What's the one thing we want them to remember?
That while financial instability is super challenging, it doesn't have to break a relationship.
In fact, it can make it stronger.
But it takes a conscious effort to approach it as a team, to communicate openly and honestly, to support each other unconditionally, and to remember that you're not alone.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. There will be bumps in the road.
Hmm.
But as long as you're facing them together with love and support, you'll come out stronger on the other side.
And the podcast also touched on something that I think is really important. Sometimes seeking professional help can be incredibly beneficial.
Oh, for sure.
Like a financial advisor to help you create a budget and get your finances in order.
A therapist to help you navigate the emotional challenges.
Or even a career counselor to help your partner find new employment opportunities.
There's no shame in asking for help.
Right. It actually takes a lot of strength and courage to admit that you need support.
And think about it. If you were facing a physical health challenge, you wouldn't think twice about seeing a doctor. So why should it be any different with your financial health?
That's such a good point. So what are some signs that it might be time to reach out for professional help?
Like feeling constantly overwhelmed,
Yeah.
difficulty communicating about money
Mm-hmm.
without it turning into an argument,
Mm-hmm.
feeling like you're stuck in a cycle of debt and you just can't see a way out.
All really valid points. And remember, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
It means you're taking care of yourself, your partner, and your relationship.
Absolutely. So important. It really is. It's about acknowledging that we don't have to go through tough times alone. There's help out there, people who can help us navigate these waters and come out, stronger.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's recap some key takeaways for supporting your partner through, financial instability. First and foremost, Open and honest communication.
Couldn't agree more. It all starts there.
Right. Create that safe space for these conversations about money. Make sure you both feel heard, you know?
Yeah, and once you've laid that groundwork, creating a plan together is so important.
Totally. So you're moving from like feeling overwhelmed to taking action.
Right, whether it's setting up a budget or exploring new income sources or maybe even getting professional advice, having a roadmap can really make things feel less, overwhelming.
And taking those steps together can really solidify that we're a team feeling.
Totally. And, one thing that really stuck with me from the podcast was this idea that embracing frugality, doing it together, can actually be like a bonding experience.
That's so interesting because at first you think frugality and sounds like a drag, but
Yeah.
but what they were saying is it's about finding ways to enjoy life without breaking the bank,
Right.
rediscovering those simple pleasures.
Maybe even finding some hidden talents or passions you never knew you had.
Right, like, hey, I'm pretty good at making my own candles or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
And we can't forget that crucial message about financial instability not defining anyone's worth.
Oh, that is so important.
Because it's easy to internalize it, you
Yeah.
know? Let it affect how you see yourself.
It really is.
But your value as a person has nothing to do with your bank account.
And remember, supporting your partner through this is about more than just practical advice and, financial tips.
Right. What else is there?
Well, it's that emotional and mental support too.
So it's those words of encouragement, those little acts of kindness, just being there for them when they're feeling down.
Exactly. Be their rock. That source of strength and belief, especially when they're having trouble believing in themselves.
It's powerful stuff.
It really is.
We really hope this deep dive gave you some helpful insights and a bit of hope that even though financial instability can be a real challenge, it doesn't have to be a relationship deal breaker.
Right. It can actually be an opportunity for growth and for deepening your connection.
And a chance to build resilience as a couple.
You got it. And to leave you with one final thought, what are some non-financial ways you can support your partner during times of financial stress? What are those little things, those gestures that can really make a difference?
That's a great question to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.